So, we're here with John Iannucci of ILG Private Wealth. John, great to have you. Word on the street is you have a new solution or strategy for asset protection, for estate planning for May to September couples.
Absolutely. Rob, thanks for having me. Over the years, we've met with a number of married couples, and in the last 10 years, what we've noticed is there's this distinct change. We're seeing this pattern over and over again where the couple has some age difference, where a husband may be 10 years or 15 years or even 20 years older than his wife, fairly affluent couple, and so we refer to them as our May-September relationships. And we, in fact, did develop a proprietary strategy to address their concerns.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. So you got the older husband, a younger wife, maybe a second wife, often, right? Maybe even third if he's getting on up there. So then when you break those down, let's focus on the husband first.
Okay.
What is it he really wants? They're sitting in your office, they're there, they're sharing. What is it you're trying to get out of him that he wants?
Great question, because that's where we always start. We want to know what our clients want. We want to know why they want it, and we want to know what will happen if he doesn't get it, and what impediments he has to achieving those goals. So when we speak to a husband, initially after some coaxing and them getting to know us and trust us, eventually the husband will admit that one of his primary concerns is that he truly does want to live a full and abundant retirement for the rest of his life. And he doesn't want to be restricted in how he lives that retirement. So he wants to make certain in this planning process that he doesn't have to scrimp and save after having done that for so many decades. He wants to be able to live the retirement that he earned. So first and foremost, he wants that full and abundant retirement. Second of all, after some discussion, typically what you find is the husband does want the ability to guarantee his wife that she will be able to continue to live that abundant retirement after his passing. Now, I will tell you that consistently when you get husbands to admit it, what they want to do is make certain that in guaranteeing that retirement solution, that they want to protect their wives, because oftentimes their wives hadn't had much to say with respect to the investment planning or the retirement planning. So he does want to protect his wife from market turndowns, from unscrupulous financial advisors, and from what jokingly referred to as gigolos, who might come through and end up taking all of their retirement savings. And then finally, because there are typically children from a prior marriage, the husband wants the opportunity to provide his children from that prior relationship with a significant inheritance. And he doesn't want that relationship, that desire to support his children and provide his children with a head start in life, to compete with his wife's retirement needs. He doesn't want to set up that animosity between his children and his wife.
That's good. So that's the what they want. But we all know one of the most important things when you're having these intimate financial conversations is the why.
Right.
Why does he want those things
Right.
when you're sitting across the desk from him?
Sure. He wants to make certain that he has the right to live that abundant retirement, and he doesn't want to sacrifice any of that opportunity going forward in order to provide for his children or his wife. Second of all, he really wants to make sure that he doesn't have any marital discord over this issue. He certainly does not want another divorce because he has a younger spouse who thinks that she's not being taken care of. And if she sees some risk to her future retirement, that's a real concern for her, and he doesn't want that additional tension. Nor does he want the tension with his children, for them thinking, oh, dad married a second younger wife, dad is putting all of his resources to support that second wife, and what happened to our inheritance. So he knows there's this inherent tension that takes place between children from a prior marriage and another wife, and he wants to make certain that he avoids that. So he wants to eliminate that family turmoil both between and among his children, as well as between his children and his wife. And certainly he wants to make sure that there isn't animosity that ultimately leads to a lawsuit, like a will contest between his children and his wife. So he's hoping to be able to accomplish all those things because he realizes if he doesn't, this is what his future looks like.
So he wants the why is he really wants clarity and eliminate the need for even discussion. So
Right.
there's clarity. You don't have to worry about the drama. You know what the plan is.
Right.
How do you get them to open up? I mean,
Yeah.
those got to be pretty intimate conversations.
They really are. And it takes a certain level of conversation for them to be able to trust you to open up to you. And so at first, what I see with couples like that is they're unwilling to address those issues. They really don't want to talk about those issues. They're looming in the background. There's no question. Each one of them has those concerns, and they're looming in the background, but they have a very difficult time discussing them, particularly in front of a stranger. So they also have noticed that when they've asked about some of these issues with other financial advisors, prior financial advisors, they really were either inexperienced or ill-equipped to really address those issues and implement and manage ultimately a comprehensive May-September retirement solution.
Yeah. So then what happens if they don't open up or they can't get the solution they need? They don't find the right financial advisor with the expertise and the right licensing. What happens if they don't get it?
Eventually it leads to a disaster. What we found is that certainly it may lead to another divorce. It certainly leads to acrimony between his children and his wife. And finally, for some husbands, they end up living a very significantly reduced, less abundant retirement in order to provide and address for everybody's issues when they don't have a concise, precise solution to those issues.
Which is worst case scenario. All right, so then let's shift to the young wife. So same scenario, the couple sitting there, you're having some of the discussion, you know, it's maybe a little bit awkward, maybe there's some tension, but you know, then you turn to the wife. What does she really want in a conversation in a scenario like that?
You know, I think it really comes down to one word. It comes down to security. You know, she wants to continue to have an abundant retirement with her husband while he's alive. But she also really wants the security of knowing that she'll continue to have that abundant retirement when he passes. And ultimately, when the relationship is good between the spouse and the husband's children, she really does want to have and continue to have a cordial and loving relationship with those children after his passing.
All right, so again, then, you know, the husband was the why, he wants clarity. Same thing for the younger spouse. Why? Why does she want this?
Well, oftentimes, you know, that younger spouse may have sacrificed a career, particularly to retire early so that she can enjoy time and travel with her husband, who's older and has that kind of freedom of time. So she may feel like she sacrificed her career and certainly has not had the opportunity to accumulate retirement savings. So she may have sacrificed the opportunity to have children. She may have married an older man who doesn't want children, has children from a prior marriage, and isn't interested in having additional children. She's made a commitment to caring for her husband as he ages because she recognizes that at some point she's going to have to care for him as he ages and ultimately passes. And then, you know, she's been a caring and committed stepmother to his children. So she feels like she's put in the time, the energy, and the effort to be a great spouse, to be a great stepmother. And she feels like she's entitled to have that security that she so badly needs.
Sounds reasonable. So what happens for her if she doesn't get that?
You know, the anxiety only worsens. As they continue to live an abundant lifestyle and as they age up, if she isn't given that security of knowing that she'll be taken care of for the rest of her life and will be able to maintain that same lifestyle, that anxiety leads to marital acrimony and may lead to divorce. But ultimately, even if the marriage survives, it ultimately leads to a very serious conflict between the stepchildren and her.
Which no one wins.
Right, exactly.
So then what are the primary obstacles then that she has to overcome or that you need to overcome with them in this scenario?
Good question. You know, oftentimes that spouse, that wife, hasn't had control over the finances. You know, the husband has created and brought the wealth to the relationship. He's kind of an alpha male. He's had control over those relationships. He's had control over the investments. And she's had very little access or information about those investments or their finances. So she has a complete lack of information. They may have been working with an inexperienced or incompetent financial advisor, and she doesn't know who to turn to. She may have a prenuptial agreement that has to be dealt with as a part of this process. She's concerned about the fear of reprisal. If this continues to get more, if there's more and more acrimony developed in the relationship, it could lead to divorce. And then ultimately, the conflict again, as we talked about, the conflict with her stepchildren. So she's worried about all those things, the fear of reprisal through divorce, reputation concerns sometimes because some friends in the community might start to think that she was a gold digger and she married him only for his money. Couldn't be further from the truth in a lot of circumstances. But all of those things stand in her way of being able to achieve that goal of security for future.
So let's talk then about your May to September strategy specifically.
Mm-hmm.
How does your strategy meet these needs, these wants, overcome these obstacles?
Mm-hmm.
Give us a bit of a snapshot of that.
Sure. So we've really spent a lot of time working on strategies that would address each and every one of those concerns. So we've developed a proprietary strategy where we can allocate a portion of their investments or their overall assets to a plan that would guarantee the surviving spouse's retirement for the rest of her life. We've also come up with a strategy on how to utilize the remaining investments to support their joint lifestyle while they're still together, while he's still alive, to maintain that abundant retirement plan for the rest of his life so he doesn't feel like he has to scrimp and save for some future event. And then finally, we always advise that we bring the children from the prior marriage into the conversation early on in the process. Because once her retirement concerns have been addressed, once his retirement concerns have been addressed, then the balance of his estate plan is free to provide the inheritance that he's always wanted to provide to his children. So we bring them into that process so that they understand early on how all of their concerns, the children's concerns, the wife's concerns, husband's concerns, are all being adequately addressed. So when dad finally passes, there's no surprises. Everybody knows what's happening. Everybody has had some input and contribution to the conversation, and ultimately, it ends up being a very successful retirement and estate plan for everyone.
Oh, that's good. And then it allows them to actually be able to mourn the loss of the spouse,
right,
and actually be together as a family and navigate, right, all that. So
right,
give us then, you've implemented this. Mm-hmm. Give us an example of a conversation or a couple that you've helped walk this through and what that looked like.
Sure. So it's not unusual. Like I said, I had a couple, Joe and Mary, that came into the office. And Joe had been a very successful business owner. And Joe had gone through a very difficult divorce, but ultimately ended up getting back into the dating scene a number of years after his divorce, ended up meeting and marrying Mary. Mary was much younger. At one point, she had a very decent career. She was successful, not wealthy, but successful. And they decided to get married. And ultimately, Joe convinced Mary to give up that career so that she could spend more time with him, traveling with him, doing the things they love to do, working with the charities they love to support. And ultimately, they were living a very abundant retirement. But it was during an estate planning meeting where Joe and Mary, in meeting with their lawyers and talking about how Joe's business essentially would be divided amongst his children, that Mary blurted out, "What about me?" And I think for the first time in public, in front of a stranger, Mary communicated the fact that she was really worried about her future. Well, lawyers and estate planning lawyers are not equipped to handle those kinds of conversations. Their job is to create documents that effectuate your overall estate plan. They're not financial planners. They're not retirement planners. So that's when they were referred to me. I was able to sit down with Joe and Mary and show them how we could reallocate their investments and their assets to provide Mary with exactly what she wanted. She wanted the security of knowing that if she dedicates her life to this relationship and that she's given up her career and her retirement opportunities, that assets will be allocated to her retirement plan to make sure she maintains the very same lifestyle she enjoyed while living with Joe. We also showed them that the balance of their assets could be utilized by Joe and Mary to continue that abundant retirement for the rest of Joe's life without scrimping and saving and changing the way they were living. And then ultimately, we introduced them to the concept of fair not always being equal when we sat down and met with all of Joe's children. So we brought Joe's children in to talk about how the family business would be divided up, what other assets would be a part of the estate plan and be granted to the children. And ultimately, with everybody's input, we came up with that solution. Mary was happy. She had the retirement. All of her concerns were addressed with respect to future retirement. Joe had the freedom to continue to live that abundant lifestyle for the rest of his life. And the children understood exactly what was going to happen when Joe passed without any concerns about Mary taking more than she should or there being no assets left over for inheritance.
I'm sure they were pretty grateful.
They're great clients, great people, and we really enjoy servicing them.
Wonderful. Well, John, is there anything else listeners should know about your May to September strategy?
I think the only thing that we can do is tell you that, We have about 107 different strategies that we utilize whenever we talk about somebody's estate plan, or there are 107 or 10 strategies that we think about. We may only use 4 or 5 of them, but everybody's situation is different. So what I would ask and what I would suggest is that if you have an interest in our May-September solution, that you simply reach out to us on wecanhelpyou.com. There's a link there where you can request an appointment with me, where we can sit down and actually address your specific concerns with your specific fact pattern. Love to meet them.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for being here today, John. You heard it. Website, book a meeting, and you get to see how beautiful John is in person.